it's Dr. T, and welcome to my home office. So when doing the video on enzymes and vitamins, specifically vitamins, for my Survey 2 class, I wanted to include a bunch of stories about different vitamin deficiencies. Because for something to be a vitamin, by definition, there has to be a disease where there's a deficiency. And, well, that video was too long anyways, so here's some of them, and this may get cut into a couple of different videos. Okay, so let's just take them alphabetically. I'm not going to go through every single vitamin, but let's go with A. So vitamin A, of course, is going to be retinol or anything your body can turn into retinol. Beta-carotene is the quintessential choice. Now, all your vitamins are ones that if you eat a well-balanced diet, you're going to have a large amount of. And this is kind of the core of why they're a vitamin. These are complicated molecules for your body to make, and you already eat them anyway, so why make them? And thus, the machinery to make them is gone, so you have to eat them, but you normally eat them. So, vitamin A is the leading cause of blindness in the world, or deficiency of vitamin A, I should say. And then there's, attempts to solve this. And one of the current pushes is for genetically engineered grains, which typically the part of a grain you eat, whether it be rice, corn, or whatnot, is not going to have much in the way of vitamins. It's almost always pure starch, or predominantly starch. Depends on your grain. Now, these are going to be genetically engineered to have beta-carotene. Beta-carotene is orange. Instead of calling it orange rice or orange corn, which would be a more apt decision or a more apt name, it's called golden rice or golden corn because that sounds cool. Yeah. Here's the thing, though. This is great, but carrots are a thing. We're solving a problem of we can't get enough money to people so that they can live a quality of life that they can afford to buy a carrot every now and then. Instead, we're having to genetically engineer a plant so that they can grow it as subsistence farmers because they're going to barely be able to eke out a living growing some rice or some corn or some whatever. I mean, I'm all for helping people and I'm all for the golden rice thing, but seriously, this is not solving the root of the cause. The root of the cause is these people are living such a poor life, have such a financially deprived life, they can't afford to buy a carrot every now and then. Let's try and tackle that. And that's something, as a chemist, that's completely out of my ability to do. But yeah. Next one, this is a little bit more historical. Vitamins B1 and B3. These deficiencies are going to be diseases of beriberi and pellagra. The B vitamins are all called B vitamins because we originally thought they were one vitamin. That's because most of them are found pretty much together. So the stories on these, they also tend to be used on energy metabolism. So the stories on these are actually fairly simple. Beriberi was looked at a little bit more in kind of the Southeast Asia area. It was first realized by, I believe it was British researchers, Western of some flavor. But it was also discovered by the Japanese in their working as well. And what would happen quite often is people would have a diet that was rich in white rice. White rice is, you take a normal rice and you strip off the outer husk. There's actually like 4 or 5 different levels. You're taking them all the way down to the starchy core. You do this for a couple reasons. One, let's just be blunt, it tastes a lot better. But it also lasts a lot longer. So people would do that. The problem is nutritionally, you just throw away all of the nutrition except for the calories. Which, I mean, you need the calories, don't get me wrong, but you've gotten rid of all of the vitamins, minerals, everything, except for the calories. So once again, poor people, just like in the previous example, if they were in rural environments where they were growing their own rice, wouldn't go all the way to white rice. It's extra work stripping it down. You would go strip it down enough so you still have the endosperm on the rice grains. You would cook that, you would eat that, because it's a lot less work to do that. But if you're going to the city, you need to strip them down all the way for storage. So the urban poor and military would quite often eat white rice, and this is specifically the case in Japan. Well, all of a sudden you've got a fairly big epidemic of beriberi, and this is right at the time where we don't really know what vitamins are. This is the end of the 19th century, kind of Russo-Japanese War period. And the real solution here is to make sure people can eat a reasonably healthy diet. But of course, that doesn't really take place. That's something that's really a struggle to actually get to, and get folks to realize, especially higher ups, to realize that you need to make sure nutritional assistance is important. We have a similar story in the United States. In this case, it's not with B1 but B3, niacin. Its disorder is pellagra, and this was noticed heavily in the southern United States. Once in kind of the after the Civil War, early 20th century kind of period. So we're talking that kind of range. Very common in prisons, very common in orphanages, and very common with the poor. And so the U.S. sends down one of our top up-and-coming army surgeons, says, yo, figure this out. He goes through, realizes that the commonality between these folks is terrible diet. It's not happening to some folks, but those usually are getting a little bit more, few more fresh vegetables and whatnot. And so he sets up a series of experiments that by today's standards are absolutely no-goes. By then standards were questionable. And what he's doing is he's getting prisoners and folks in mental institutions to, okay, here, split in half. You all get good food for this week or this month or so. Y'all, on the other side, get cornbread and water, basically. Okay, switch. And what he would showed was that the horrible diet, those folks would get pellagra, and the folks with the good diet wouldn't. And then when you switched, then the folks with pellagra were cured, and the folks without pellagra got pellagra, and then once he gave them good food at the end, they were all cured. So, solution. Get people more money, get them the ability to, eat a healthy diet. And the top-down response is, don't be silly. It's not until the mid-20th century till we understand what niacin is, and we start incorporating it into foods, that pellagra really goes away. And it's still not 100% away, but it's pretty much gone because we do now take a lot of those B vitamins and we spike them into foods. So if you look at enriched flour or fortified cereals, that kind of stuff, that all has assorted vitamins put into it just to make sure that niacin is not a problem. You have no pellagra, no beriberi, etc. Moving down on the list, let's go vitamin C. Of course, everyone knows this one. This is scurvy. This was a long time problem for human history. Vitamin C is very reactive with the air. So if you have fruit, if it stays in kind of fruit form, then it's not too bad. But once you start, letting oxygen in, of course, if you try and store it for any long periods of time, there's a good chance it's going to react with oxygen. And the solution is you got to eat something fresh. Now, there had been some goals of, okay, we'll do pickles. And pickles will preserve the vitamin C in the cucumbers a lot better than you would otherwise see. So they thought, this is acid. So in the age of sail, scurvy is a major problem. British warships have got 2-3 times the crew that they need just because they're assuming half the crew is down with scurvy and other assorted diseases. So you start getting a few British captains, admirals, etc. They're like, no, we're going to fix this problem. We're going to make the ships nice and clean, ship shape, that whole thing. Sailors did not appreciate this. And then started experimenting, and they thought it was acid. So they were giving people dilute sulfuric acid, which of course did nothing good. Then it was realized limes worked, and limes worked great. But lemons were cheaper, so they switched to lemons, and then they juiced the lemons, which of course, the lemon itself already had I've got this switched. They used lemons, and then they switched to limes. My bad. The limes have a smaller amount of vitamin C to start with, and then they made lime juice, and then I may have the lemon and lime thing completely switched, but it's still the idea is. Then they made citrus juice, which of course the vitamin C depletes horrendously. Vitamin C deficiency, scurvy, does eventually go away, but it actually has nothing to do with the solution. The solution was the boats got faster, and you weren't stuck on the boat for as long, so you eventually got to a port and actually had some fresh food. It wasn't until, once again, the 20th century, we actually understand what on earth ascorbic acid is, why scurvy is a thing, and now we can directly treat scurvy. Vitamin D is kind of one of those weird ones. It's one you can actually make, but you need ultraviolet light. When I was first starting to teach, right as I'm leaving graduate school, there was this theory. Or theory is the wrong word. Hypothesis is the correct word here. It was known, and is still known, it's one of those unfortunate truths, that people with darker skins do tend to have worse health outcomes, even when you try and control it for everything under the sun, economic factors, education, whatnot. So the question is, of course, why? And so there was this hypothesis. It was one of those wonderful hypotheses. It was wonderful because if it was true, this was going to be easy to fix. The thought was, okay, darker skin means more melanin, more absorption of ultraviolet light, therefore less vitamin D production. Also, people tend to stay indoors a lot nowadays with, LED or fluorescent or incandescent lights, all of which don't produce much UV to start with. So, hey, maybe everyone just doesn't have enough vitamin D in their diet. They need to consume more vitamin D. Our studies of how much vitamin D we needed are out of date, or they're miscalibrated. So, yay, let's increase vitamin D consumption, especially for people with darker skin tones. Yeah, that didn't work. It would have been great. I mean, vitamin D is stupid cheap to make. I mean, you can just make tons of it for next to nothing. That would have been easy. No, turns out the best guess right now is that, as you were probably aware, people with darker skin, well, people treat people badly, period. And people with darker skin tones tend to get treated even more badly than everyone else. And that added stress is, shall we say, not good for you, which, of course, doesn't take a rocket science to figure out. Boy, the vitamin D thing, though, man, if that had been the case, that would have been so easy. I'm going to skip the rest of the vitamins, and I'm going to go on to a mineral. In this case, it is iodide. So iodide, used by certain enzymes, specifically your thyroid gland. And if you don't have enough of it, the thyroid gland, which is located kind of in the neck area, will start to get larger. It swells up, and this is what's known as a goiter. So there was a public health move in, once again, the early 20th century. And a lot of this you start seeing in this kind of either after World War I, after World War II kind of scenarios. After each of the world wars, we start getting this idea of, okay, we can make our lives better. Let's throw some science at this. Really went hardcore in the 50s. But what we have taken, or what we've gone to doing, is making sure people don't have iodine deficiencies. And that's why when you buy salt, you typically will find iodized salt. This has a small amount of potassium iodide put into it. That way you get enough iodine in your diet, no matter what your diet happens to be, and yay, no iodine deficiencies. We've done this with quite a few things. This is once in kind of this more so after World War II, where we started incorporating things that a lot of people were deficient in, and just trying, hey, we're just going to fix this problem. No one's going to be deficient in this thing. We're going to put it in everything. And that worked out well. So that said, there's a couple of stories on vitamin deficiencies. Hopefully lessons to be learned so that we never have this problem again. With that said, have a wonderful day.